Can we really say that nobody talks about these horror movies if we're talking about them right now? It sort of feels like asking if a tree makes a sound if it falls when nobody's around. It's paradoxical and perplexing. It's a good thing that all these movies are scary enough to make you forget about all that. You know it's time for the top 5 scariest horror movies nobody talks about, part 4. Coming in at number 5, we've got Fingers. If you're looking to have all expectations thrown out the window, stomped on by somebody in biker boots, and then lit on fire with a can of hairspray and a knockoff Bic lighter, then this movie is for you. I honestly don't know if I can summarize the plot, but believe me when I say it's worth it to stick around through all the weirdness. Seriously, if you want to be thoroughly disturbed, surprised, and fascinated, give Fingers a watch. Apparently it's also known as Work Sticks, which I guess is a little more search engine friendly. Try searching for Fingers without adding the year or the word movie. You'll get a nice stock image of everyone's favorite digits. Okay, so enough about Google compatibility and more about the movie. Let's talk about what makes it so wild and why more people should be talking about it. Fingers is about a woman, Amanda, who has a lot of problems dealing with the imperfections on bodies that aren't hers. She finds herself unable to deal with the thought of having a baby because if it were to have any sort of deformity, she can't be sure she'd be able to live with it. She can't deal with other people that look strange to her, so often she'll run screaming from certain types of folks just trying to live their lives. And then there's Walter. Walter is Amanda's coworker at a mental health app startup. One day he shows up to work missing a finger and tries to play it off like it's nothing. Like blood on the keyboard, bone exposed to the air, but he just wants to get back to work. Don't talk about it. Amanda cannot handle this and has a meltdown. And from there, the story splits off in a bunch of different directions and they all become these weird overlapping stories. We learn the story behind Walter's missing finger, which soon becomes missing fingers. And there's a self-help therapist who seems to make a living on ludicrously overpriced books with the message, "Kill your fears." A panda-masked cannibal runs amok, locking people in storage crates, drinking $12 beers, and wielding bolt cutters. All of these weird and wild characters eventually interact in explosive, bloody, and despicable ways, resulting in a series of murders nobody can really guarantee actually happened. And Walter? Well, Walter ends up with 9 fingers in the trash and a whole lot of questions. Fingers is a movie that needs to be seen to be believed. And at that point, it's still hard to believe. The first 20-odd minutes of this movie are decidedly awkward and hard to follow, but after taking in the whole experience, it opens right up to all sorts of different interpretations. It's definitely not for everyone, but I dream of a world in which all sorts of fruitful conversations about chaos, self-importance, and the awful reality of being born with a body. Go watch this movie. Coming in at number 4, we've got Housebound. On the other end of the weird horror movie spectrum, we've got the outlandishly funny Housebound. But just because there are some funny moments here doesn't mean that this Kiwi horror flick isn't truly terrifying. It takes a couple twists and turns that I wish I could forget just so I can go and see it again for the first time. See, Housebound takes what appears to be a haunted house movie and turns it on its head. Kicking off with a young woman being put on house arrest and outfitted with an ankle monitor, it is a tale of homecoming and adult loneliness. Poor Kylie just wanted to steal an ATM, but now she's forced to take up residence with her mother and stepfather. She quickly realizes that the house has some strange quirks and soon comes to the conclusion that it might be haunted by a ghost. Or is it? See, there's more than meets the eye to each and every character in this movie. That is a bit that I think is definitely worth talking about. The whole message behind it is things aren't as they seem, and it commits to this message hardcore. Each person you meet has 2 sides at least, and the house itself is hiding plenty of secrets. And these secrets are where things get really scary. Is it a ghost? Or has something even more sinister taken up residence in the dusty walls? Could someone be living in the shadows, spying on the family, eating their food, taking their things? That is a personal fear of mine, finding out that someone's been squatting in my home while I live there. Yeah, I'd have to move or something. And then there's the cold terror induced by bureaucracy and power structures and how they affect those caught up in the justice system. It might seem like a more general lifetime fear, but it plays out much more stabby and spooky in Housebound, trust me. I caught the last half of this movie in passing one day and then watched it in full later on and was super surprised I hadn't heard much about it. So go give it a watch and see how many hidden personalities you can pick out. Coming at number 3, we've got Lose. This is a mindfuck. Plain and simple. Clocking in at around 70 minutes, it barely qualifies as a feature, but that short runtime only adds to the confusing, dreamlike quality of this flick. It reminds viewers of Lynch at times, of classic giallo films from the 70s at others, all tied together with stylish cinematography and hypnotic visuals, of course. Luz is about a demonic possession that comes back seemingly out of nowhere. A cabbie had summoned a demon back in her days as a schoolgirl, and now it has come to collect. But it doesn't play out like any other kind of possession movie. No exorcist comes right out and says there's a demon here. That plays out in a number of flashbacks that melt into the plot currently happening. When two characters leave the bar to find the cabbie, the demon appears to make its way from person to person. The order in which this happens is questionable, and the motivations of each character are totally up for interpretation. Even so, Luz draws you in and keeps you there for the entirety. In fact, the short runtime probably helps in keeping folks around for the whole experience. Any longer and people might get confused and shut it off for lack of coherent plot. But as is, it is a fascinating movie and well worth a discussion. And of course, there are some truly freaky moments woven throughout. It made a splash at a few festivals and turned some heads when it was picked up by Shudder, but I haven't heard too much about it since then. So go start those conversations, won't you? Coming in at number 2, we've got Dolls. Of all these Stuart Gordon horror flicks out there, I feel as though Dolls gets the least amount of love. All of the Lovecraft adaptations are buoyed by the 80s horror charm and eldritch mega fans. His sci-fi stuff is in a class of its own, really, and of course there's King of the Ants, which dabbles in neo-noir extremism. So where does Dolls fit in? Maybe somewhere between Society and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? It's odd, to say the least. But if you've ever been freaked out by a creepy miniature or a truly horrific old doll, then this movie will make your blood run cold. Playing out like a fairy tale of sorts, lauding the benefits of remaining a child at heart and punishing those who might be fueled by greed or spite. And the punishments doled out to those who don't fit the description of joyful and innocent are quite obscene. A mansion full of living dolls would indeed be a good place to kill some sinners, eh? Folks get tossed out of windows, stabbed with tiny weapons, and of course turn into horrid miniature versions of themselves. Oh, what fun. What it lacks in complexity, Dolls makes up for in visual terror. Seriously, the dolls and the other toy-like companions are a total nightmare, and when they start moving, that terror gets kicked up to a whole new level. So if you've seen Reanimator or From Beyond and want some more of that Stuart Gordon magic, look no further than the generally underappreciated Dolls. It's not Lovecraft, and the body horror is toned down a little bit compared to a lot of the other work, but boy, is it a freaky little number. And finally at number 1, we've got Marabone. With a world-class cast and a horrific late-game realization for the ages, Marabone is a wonderfully tragic horror story. This is director Sergio G. Sanchez doing what he does best. If you've seen his breakout horror movie, The Orphanage, then you probably have a pretty good idea of what you're gonna get here. A moody, tightly wound period piece with all sorts of secrets to be uncovered. 4 siblings are forced to move to their mother's ancestral home following a violent string of crimes committed by their father. Soon after, their mother dies, and in order to stay together, the Marabone siblings must keep up the appearance that she's still alive. The eldest child, Jack, takes on the role of the breadwinner and protector. He notices that the old house contains some sort of malevolence and comes up with different rituals in order to keep his siblings safe. But over time, pressures from the outside world leak in, and he's unable to keep up the facade of peace. This is a movie that benefits greatly from a second watch, and all sorts of previously sneaky details become a whole lot more obvious. I don't want to say too much more, as the first watch is definitely a roller coaster, but Marabone is amazing and apparently underrated. More people should be talking about it. So get to talking. I want these movies discussed until there's no discussion left, all right? Well, maybe don't take it that far, but they're definitely all jam-packed with interesting stuff. So what'd you think of the list? Have you seen any of these? What's a criminally underrated flick that you wish got more airtime? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more gaseous ones from the top 5 haunted roads you should never drive on. Santiago E. Juarez Martinez says, me, putting all the directions into my GPS. You can't stop me? I mean, you're right, I can't stop you, but I can give you a stern warning. DJ Legendary says, thumbs down on the Jersey joke. Well, that sounds exactly like something someone from Jersey who can't take a joke would say. PDL says, I won't say which one, but I can 1000% vouch for one of these. Come on, tell us which one. And Ian Cameron is making me wonder if he's a demon. That's all the time we have for today. I'm going to air fry some plastic explosives. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. but it's a good thing. Nope, I'm not gonna say but. You know, it's time. Nope. Very up to interpretation. A panda masked criminal rungs a mugger. A panda masked cannibal. Lose. His sci-fi stuff is in a class of its own, really, and no,